cancel culture is such a tricky thing. I think on one hand, society is calling people out for problematic behaviors. The sucky thing is, one error, which all humans make, can haunt someone for the rest of their lives.
That's unfair, yeah.
AI has originally been built by a human. It's taking on a life of its own, but those biases are built in. The tool might distinguish something that's scary or wrong, but actually the context is really important for that.
What's been the most exciting or unexpected challenge you're faced in executing an influencer marketing campaign?
I think is authenticity, the most important buzzword that we have now. You need to make sure that the storytelling is authentic, the brand relationships are authentic, and the conversation that you're having online resonates with people.
If you had to make a bold prediction about where influencer marketing will be in 5 years, what would it be?
My hope is that there's going to be a new platform.
Oh, I like that.
Time for a new player in the game. If there's someone that can nail live, that's going to be the most crucial thing. Live shopping is huge in Asia, and it's where the social media networks are making their money. It's not off paid media anymore.
Hello everyone, this is Shubham Tiwari. I'm the Associate Director of Content Marketing and Socials at Phyllo, the universal solution for social media background checks and influencer vetting. I welcome you all to the season 3 of Impulse, Google's #1 rated podcast on influencer marketing. My guest today is Mikhail Hanney, Managing Director at Pulse Advertising, a powerhouse in the influencer marketing world. Mikhail isn't just leading campaigns, he's shaping how global brands leverage creators for real business impact. With experience driving high-stakes campaigns for some of the world's biggest brands, he has a front row seat to the ever-evolving social media landscape. We're diving into everything today, from advertising to PR to influencer marketing. We are going to discuss Pulse's journey and, of course, Mikhail's journey as well. So, Mikhail, welcome to Impulse.
Thank you very much. I'll have to send this to my mum with all the kind words that you said about me.
Well, thank you so much for that. That's the best compliment we have gotten for this. So let's start something on fun. One social media trend that you secretly hate.
That is, can I go back in the past, or is it a trend that's now that's important?
You can go in the past, but recent past, not much of the history.
Okay, I think, to be honest, it was cool while it started, but the fact that people are still talking about Brat versus Demure does my head in. I think we've moved on from that. I'm still seeing brands talking about, whether something is demure. I think that the time has passed. We need to move on. It had its time. It is no longer Brat Summer.
Great. And which, if we, check your, let's say, the screen time, which social media app is going to be number 1?
I hate to admit, but it's probably LinkedIn.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I talk on Instagram.
I do try and sort of, as much as I, run a social media agency, try to limit my time on Instagram and TikTok before I go to sleep. But LinkedIn creeps in there. My team makes fun of me a little bit because they know when I'm taking a photo at any given work outing, that's going up on LinkedIn within the next 30 minutes.
Great. Coming to Pulse now. So Pulse has a strong reputation in influencer marketing. How did you build it? Is there a particular campaign or a moment that put, Impulse on the Pulse on the map? So Impulse and Pulse.
You tell me about Impulse, I'll tell you about Pulse.
Like you made it possible for us to rank higher, and
absolutely. The checks in the mail.
Yep.
No, so Pulse has been around for 10 years now. We had our 10-year anniversary party last year.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Throughout that time, the company's tried a whole range of different things. It has tried apps. It's tried, representing talent. I think we found that it was difficult to get other talent agencies to agree to work with us if we were one of the competitions. So we've really focused on that influencer marketing piece at its core, social media management, content production, as well as the overarching strategy and the paid strategy that complements that. I think there's not necessarily a magic formula, right? Like every day is very different, and what we find is that every brand requires something different. We're not locked into a single vertical, so we work across tech, fashion, automotive, beauty. But I do think that having a team that's passionate about social media and understands trends is, the earlier question, like what is the trend? I've got a team of, mainly Gen Z, but a lot of young people that really love social media. And I think that often what they're absorbing outside of work is what's informing, what's going into the campaigns, what ideas we're putting forward, and how we're making sure that our clients are staying relevant and moving as quickly as possible. I do think that the team could spend a little less time on social media, but it's probably not in my best interest to recommend that. And yeah, I think in terms of, there's been so many great moments over the years. Something that we're always very proud of was probably about 2 years ago now when we were working with Mac on London Fashion Week, and Tube Girl Sabrina Bassoon was going viral on sort of the Tuesday, and by the Sunday we had her walking in London Fashion Week on the runway. It moved very quickly, but it was really cool because that was, part of the zeitgeist of the moment, and being able to, first of all, really create a moment that was authentic to the creator and the brand. Sabrina was a Mac girly for many years before that. Was really awesome. But also working with brands that really get social media and are willing to jump on these trends quickly, right, to be authentic. That was a pretty cool moment, and that we've had university students that we've had come in and they're saying that actually they've been studying that as part of their course, which is bizarre to me, but I guess that's the pace that the world moves now.
Right. And speaking of brands, as you mentioned, brands that get social media, you worked with some of the biggest, most recognizable brands, around the world. What's been the most exciting or unexpected challenge you're faced in executing an influencer marketing campaign? As you said, there are some brands that understand it. And have you also worked with brands that don't understand it? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone is at different levels, right? We've got brands who, social media is their marketing channel, and particularly, when you're working with brands that have been at the forefront of that space, for as long as we have, you don't need to kind of convince them actually this brief needs work, or we do recommend working with this creator because this is why, and that does work well. What I find a challenge that a lot of brands are having is when you've got this global direction, you've got this need to make sure that there's consistency, right? If everything's being thrown onto the wall, making sure everything sticks, still ensuring that that's locally relevant and the local teams are bringing that to life. Is a massive challenge. Budgets are finite and shrinking at the moment. So there's this need to be globally efficient and effective. But there's a lot of teams that, maybe the global team gets it, but the local team has sort of got other priorities. Or maybe the local team really gets it and they've got this great relationship with creators and they're doing cool content. But the global team is like, hang on, what are you doing? That doesn't match what we're sort of doing in our, Silicon Valley head office or whatever. So I think that's one of the challenges, really sort of doing global and local well at the same time. And then the other thing I think is authenticity. That's a buzzword, but probably the most important buzzword that we have now, right? In social media, you need to make sure that the storytelling is authentic, the brand relationships are authentic, and the conversation that you're having online resonates with people. And I think a lot of people don't get what that means. And it's also very scary if you've got, if you're used to big studio productions and everything's planned and the brand is perfect and the product is pristine, someone might pick something up and it doesn't go to plan. And actually that can be really beautiful, right? Learning how to use a product, after a couple of tries, that's great entertaining content. And it might be authentic to the personality of the creator, but it doesn't fit within the brand guidelines. And I think that is a big challenge now because you've got a lot of smaller brands popping up taking that market share because they get it. It's maybe they are influencers and they've got their own brand, or perhaps there's just smaller players that have got an ability to move quicker on things like trends, or and so I think that's a big challenge. And when you're working with these big brands and you've got these kind of like multiple team members and a lot of stakeholders in place, often the point of contact we're working with wants to achieve that as well, but there's a lot of red tape to get through to make sure that you're staying on things topically and keeping things authentic to what consumers actually want to consume.
Right. Can you give us a number, an average number? How much is the budget of these big brands? What are we talking about here in terms of numbers?
Yeah, I mean, look, it depends, right? We work with some big global teams and they're on a year-long campaign and maybe that's $1 million that they're investing. But actually, sometimes it's like, hey, we've got this budget, we've got 50K and we just want to activate a few small people to, get something out locally. So it really can depend. And then you've got other aspects as well. Like if you're wanting it to be a big seeding thing, like what are the logistics of that? And, how well do you want it packaged? Or if it's an event, how much of that do we need to kind of get involved in the planning and execution of? So the budgets vary. Naturally, the bigger the budget, the happier my boss is. The better. But there are people out there doing some really cool things, that don't require huge budgets, and I think that's it's not always what you're putting in. It's the planning that helps you get out the most impact.
You also mentioned something interesting. You I think mentioned in the passing that the budgets are shrinking now. What did you mean by that?
I think as a general rule, budgets, like social media budgets are increasing. You're seeing a lot of brands shifting from traditional media to
social media.
Social, yeah. But I think as well, there's still a lot of scrutiny on, how much impact is being felt up a funnel. And we're finding that there is a lot of conversations that steer continuously. And I think this will always be the challenge with social media, right? You want it to be this sort of brand awareness, this halo effect. But in a boardroom, you need to be able to justify, well, what impact is that having on the bottom line? And so I think that there are brands where, when you're moving things to a global model, what I was referring to there is like perhaps you've not got all these smaller pots now. Now it's, even if people are moving money to social media, it's not able to spread as wide. And I think that there's a lot of efficiencies brands are needing to find now so that global kind of spend can go further. And I think too, like channels, sorry.
No, I'm just trying to, get AI into the conversation. Do you think because of these AI agents, AI co-pilots, the budgets are shrinking because there is a more need for attribution? Because I see a lot of chatter on LinkedIn. People are saying that, the future of marketing, particularly influencer marketing, is going to be one-man army with a MarTech, with, tools which are running on autopilots or AI agents. Do you see that shift happening? Do you agree with that?
I think that there's been tools around forever, right? I mean, AI is definitely the biggest shift that we've seen in our careers to date in terms of the speed at which it's rolling out and improving and the impact that it's having, undeniably. And I think you're missing a trick if you're not using AI in your everyday life now. There's not really an excuse not to be. And I think as well, like AI is really helping to enhance things like audience targeting or building out personas to make sure you understand what your target audience needs. I don't think that it's causing a reduction in budget in other places. I think it's going to mean that people can have the tools at their disposal to use AI, to use their tools in a more intelligent way. On top of this, post a campaign going live, there's so many more insights that you can get now to make sure that you don't make the same mistakes. Right. I've been speaking to a lot of people about AI as well. I was at a conference last week and it was basically the only thing being discussed on the stage. And brands are really trying to figure out what to do with it, right? If you have a look at, the impact that Sheerlux had when they tried, having an AI influencer, there was backlash off that, and brands are scared to have, going back to the earlier topic of authenticity, it's not authentic to create something that doesn't exist and then ask people to buy it. So from a creative point of view, I think it's still very unclear about where that will go. From a tech stack point of view, I think it's going to enhance things. You're still going to need people to work with it. And I don't think that that'll go away. And even with, some of the either AI or the sophisticated technology that we use now, it doesn't pick up on those simple human truths that really create the magic that people want. And I think there might be a bit of a bell curve where people are like, oh, this is amazing. And then actually people will come back and expect more authenticity. Gone are the days where you can have a big fake thing floating down the Thames or something like that. You need, The Ordinary actually did that in real life, and that garnered much better brand sentiment for them than creating something that's artificial.
Right. I love this phrase, simple human truths. Wonderful. It's like a title of a film, man.
To be honest, it was something that a university lecturer said many, many
Oh,
years ago, and
okay.
I wish I could credit them, but I can't remember who it was. But that for me drives everything. Like if you can tap into these simple human truths, it unlocks so much. Ryanair have done it in a brilliant way where they've
I
gone,
love their Twitter. Yeah.
yeah, it's like you will buy us regardless of what you think of us as a brand. Like our brand doesn't matter, so why not lean into that? And it's awesome, Or I think Heinz is doing an excellent job at the moment of just tapping into these really beautiful moments of simple human truths. Like last year there was even when it's not Heinz, it's Heinz, where they had all the shots of people filling up Heinz bottle. It's brilliant, and it's just simple human truth of what people need. And look, maybe we can teach machines these things, but they're always going to be going off past data as opposed to something that's in the moment.
Yeah. And speaking of Heinz, that moment in Mad Men,
Yes.
have you seen Mad Men?
Yeah. No, I love it. The Mad Men moment I love is in the very first opening scene where he says something like, it's not cooked, it's toasted or something like that. And that is beautiful, right? That's old school copywriting that will always maintain.
Wonderful. Speaking of these tools, what are your go-to tools for social media management at, of course, Pulse?
Yeah, sure. So Creator IQ is a big part of our stack. We use that for influencer marketing. The team there are really helpful as well. And their Tribe Dynamics tool is really excellent for benchmarking against competitors within EMV. What I like about EMV as a KPI is using it as an index, because ultimately, regardless of how you've kind of come up with it, as long as it's consistent, you can see how you're comparing with all of your combined interactions. And
can you expand more on that?
Sure. Explain EMV just.
Yeah, for the audience. Yeah.
Sure. So earned media value, or EMV, is the total sum. It's a value that's given to the total sum of the interactions that someone has about a piece of content that someone's posted about you. So as a brand, let's take Hyundai. If they've tagged you in a post, it might be something that you've paid for. It might be something that's organic. You then attribute a value to all the different interactions. So if an impression is worth $1, a like $2, a comment $3, and a share $4, you add all of that up, and it'll give you the total earned media value of that post. Then you can add up all of those posts across the span of a campaign or a period, and that's your earned media value. I think old school PR people would tell you it's what you would have paid had you sort of spent this on an ad, but it's what you've earned. But what I actually think it's more useful for is thinking about it as an index. So you can then start to see how you're indexing on earned media value compared to your competitive set. And you can look at that in local markets, you can look at that globally, and it starts to paint a picture on what's your community size? How many people are talking about you? You can start to dive into the sentiment analysis. We use tools like Pulsar, social listening tools to sort of complement that. And that gives you a real sense of, okay, well, if I'm, Hyundai, what are people talking about Ford? Is my community growing or is it shrinking? Are they earning more than me? Were they previously? You could start to then look at, are there smaller players who are doing interesting things, and you can click in and then see who they're working with and what type of content. So that's the cool thing about Creator IQ and Tribe. Something else for a bit of a shameless plug, we also at Pulse have proprietary owned media value tool. So you can actually...
I was about to ask you, how do you come up with these values? And I think that tool is helping you out. Yeah.
Without giving too much away, if you think about it, like as I mentioned, we've been doing this for 10 years. We've got a lot of data on campaigns, on benchmarks in different industries of what you should be paying influencers in different markets. So we sort of said, well, if you can do that for an influencer, you can attribute a value as well to a brand's channel. Naturally, that's kind of relative for a couple of different factors, but you can start to go, okay, well, what's the value of the post that you're doing? Are people engaging with it? Are they sharing with it? What are the impressions? You can start to add that up, and give a value to, how much your account is worth, particularly thinking about, well, if you were an influencer, what would I pay you? And it's, that logic you can then apply to your competitors, and in the same conversation that you're having around earned media value, what's my audience talking about? You can then start to compare yourself against other brands. What value are the different accounts generating? If you've got an account that has loads of comments, people are sharing the content, people are really engaged, it is worth more. And when you're at the board table and you're having conversations with the web team who've delivered X amount of sales and the paid team who's delivering X amount of traffic, you can say, well, actually, this is the value that we're bringing to the business. And from a brand point of view, this is what it's worth. This having a tool to deliver owned media value is something that we're very proud of.
That's really interesting.
I think it's just bringing social media to the table in a way that people can understand it, and that would be willing to pay for it.
Yeah, and in a way, you're benchmarking, for your competitors as well. I mean, it's something, it's magic essentially that you are creating value out of, your data and your, of course, experience. So, speaking of magic, we just saw, the poster behind you, a creative from a campaign. So creatives play a huge role in social media marketing. What is the current workflow at Pulse, to personalize creatives at scale? Because there is, loud chat around personalization at scale thanks to AI advancements tools. So how do you do it right now?
Yeah, sure. So I think it all starts with the brief. I think that regardless of workflows, you really need to understand how to write a good brief. And that comes from, if you're briefing an influencer, or if you're briefing your creative team to create a range of content based on an idea. I think it comes down to understanding what your content pillars are so that you've got these guardrails that they can stick within, and then ensuring that you have a lot of fun within that. On the influencer side of things, the reason I say brief is that ultimately you need to trust the fact that you're paying someone not just to post, but they're creating ideas for you as part of the process. It's not for free, but it is included. And then you've got someone producing that content, which is actually a lot more cost-effective cost per content piece than if you're doing that in a studio. So that's sort of half of it from the influencer side of things. And then we're making sure that, things are tagged properly. We're using AI to do things like brand compliance checks to make sure that we're not waiting on the client to go, oh, hang on a second, that's there, or there's another brand on that, book there, take that out. AI is helping with these processes and workflows to speed things up and make the client's experience better. But then also when it comes to content production, so we work with a lot of brands who are actually not just managing their accounts, but producing that content for them as well. And it comes back to the brief and everybody understanding what's needed there. If everyone's got that understanding, then you can make sure that things are checked by the right people throughout the process. It doesn't negate, good quality, planning sessions before a production and this sort of thing. But I think that, then when you're doing things like localization, AI can be helping that way, and that personalization opens up. Doing things like, certainly captions, but also now there's technology that enables you to do lip synced voiceovers in the tone of the voice. TikTok's symposium is working towards that. So I think that's where AI can help. You still need someone as a human to be checking the authenticity of that and make sure that there's not some mistakes being made. You do see the odd thing come in that definitely should have been picked up by a human if you don't. But I think it's kind of like adding technology in at the logical steps without sort of hindering that creativity.
I'm loving this, first simple human truths and adding, things at the logical steps. Very well worded. I mean, really liking it.
I should
Uh,
work in marketing.
yeah, definitely. We should definitely collaborate further, than this podcast. Um, Speaking of human intervention, we've seen brands face backlash when an influencer, let's say their past content resurfaces, or sometimes they go off the rails, like Kanye West recently did, and whatever
Yes.
happened there. So,
Yeah.
how does Pulse, manage brand safety while allowing creators to be their authentic self based on the brief, of course, briefs?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting topic. Kanye West aside, there's a new wave of influencers and personalities that come off reality TV shows, for example, or
Yep.
there's people that were kind of finding their voice and testing things when they were younger, and sure, they might have made like mistakes. And as their content matures, their hope is that they can continue to work with great brands. And there's certainly brands that have a higher tolerance for those mistakes. I think we make sure that we're always doing due diligence on the vetting side of things to make sure that a
Mm-hmm.
brand at least knows what situation they're getting into, right? So it might be like, hey, look, 6 years ago they did say this thing, so you're aware. But then I think it's probably about making sure there's a response policy if somebody asks about that. You're never going to please everyone. I think it's just a brand being prepared to make a decision and having all the information in hand. I think maybe what you're talking about is maybe you're midway through a campaign and then something pops up.
Yeah.
That can be a little trickier to navigate. We had a situation once where I won't mention the brand, but we'd been working with these two creators, and they were a couple. And so we said, "Oh, okay, like the couple split. What do you want to do?" And they said, "Well,
In the middle of the campaign.
in the middle of the campaign." To be fair, the context is this campaign had been dragging along. Like it was going a little longer than it should have been. But the couple split. And then, so I was like, okay, this is fine. We'll work with one of the creators. They've still got a big enough following. This is okay. It's still in the subject matter of what they talk about. And then we had another pause in the campaign, and then all of a sudden we find out that the person that we chose to stay with was going on Big Brother, and that was completely against the guidelines of the brand. They said no reality TV. So these things can happen, right? There's opportunities that influencers are thinking about and taking on, and life things happen to them. It's never a dull moment. But you certainly, I think you then just need to, as a brand, understand what the brand would do in the tone of voice and with the community that they've got.
Right. But other than, these, let's call them, big moments for the sake of, this next question. What is the process of, influencer vetting looks like at Pulse? Do you have a tech stack in place for that? Are you using AI? And what's the basic process of vetting influencers?
Yeah, I think in the past, if we were doing it manually, it does take a lot of time.
A lot of time, yeah.
And we've got some big clients that require, things being looked at with a fine tooth comb. And we have actually found, with the power of AI, it can find things, and create a report that, can find an article from 10 years ago, or can find
adverse media check
things that technology, there's no tool that's going to find like technology. There's no tool that's going to find comments on a post from 10 years ago better than AI does. So we are finding that helps. I think that sometimes what I'm finding is AI flags thing, it might think something's positive, but actually we know that the tone of that isn't. Or maybe there's like a couple of skull emojis and a AI thinks that's bad, but actually it just thinks it's hilarious and a Gen Z's written it. So AI has definitely helped us move through that to make, and then we can take that as a report and say to the client, okay, look, here are the facts. This is our recommendation.
Right.
It's important in this sort of day and age that you understand political affiliations, these sorts of things, going into a campaign. Doesn't mean that someone won't work with someone, but being aware of what they stand for is important. And yeah, we definitely find technology helps with that, because just a scroll through an Instagram feed or a TikTok account doesn't always paint the full picture.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun because, ultra shameless plug. We have, our, own thing going on social media, background checks and background verification. We get a lot of fun, reports. You have to add context. Let's say a knife is shown in the, let's say the picture, but it may be in the kitchen, right? It may be not in the hand of a man or a person trying to kill someone. So we are also having a lot of fun with AI.
The thing too is you need to remember is AI has ultimately originally been built by a human. It's taking on a life of its own, but those biases are built in.
Yeah.
And that's also always worth being mindful of. Like you just said, someone might just, the tool might distinguish something as scary or wrong, but actually the context is really important for that.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of these reports, they can be fun as well. So we are trying to use these reports in our, social media marketing as well. So it's fun.
Nice.
To play with AI right now.
Well, especially, I think there's obviously so much content where AI's got it wrong, right? If someone's got three hands, or that's the infancy that we're in, and for now it is quite entertaining what it comes back with.
Yeah, and I'm quite surprised that it still can't get fingers right for some reason.
But artists struggle with that, right? Like I'm sure it took Michelangelo a long time to figure out how to carve that into marble. Hands will always, hands and feet are the tricky part.
Yeah, definitely. One question added to it is cancel culture. It's slowing down a bit now, but you understand online reputation, risk reputation. How do brands strike the right balance between trusting the due diligence that you make while working with creators? Do they give you a guideline? Do they tell you, what's the limit of, I don't know, anything that they don't want, any rule in place maybe?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think cancel culture is such a tricky thing. I think on one hand, society is calling people out for problematic behaviors, and I think that's a good thing, and that's the beautiful power of social media. The sucky thing is, one error, which all humans make, can haunt someone for the rest of their lives.
That's unfair, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, it depends. I'll try and keep this as neutral as possible, but there are certainly some people out there where I would have cancelled them a long time ago. But no, I think it can be problematic, and we have a lot of some of our brands. Their guideline or their rule is nothing within the last 5 years, which I think is healthy, right? And I think too, if there are proof points that someone has done something to combat past mistakes, then that should be recognized. And there's different tolerances, like I said, for brands that, different thresholds they're willing to do. Some just will not touch a creator if they've had any sort of controversy. Others will kind of go, actually, can we, lean into that? Do we just forgive and accept and, be prepared to answer the questions if our community is wondering why we've partnered with these people? So, I think there's no one size fits all rule. I certainly work with some brands where they would just it's just not acceptable for their brand. The risk is too great. They're too big of a powerhouse. Whereas others, actually, it's in their DNA to kind of be a bit edgy, and maybe partnering with certain people is okay.
Yeah, Ryanair again.
Correct.
Let's touch on paid, social media advertising as well. How are you using AI to bring, more actionable insights from campaigns? Can you also share some tech stack that you may be using for that?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of paid media, I think there's a lot in both the campaign setup. There's a lot that you can be doing when you're building out your audiences that you just couldn't before. And that can be helping to inform A/B or multivariate tests. You can start to understand this audience might respond better to this or this, so let's test it. Or last time this creative was the best. Let's start to spit out variations of what that can look like. And you can actually be using AI to generate those variations as well. whether it be like the call to actions on the assets, whether it's the subject matter or whatever it is. So that's exciting from a planning point of view.
Right.
And then obviously what's informing that is also the live reporting. You're not having to wait to the end of a campaign to get stuff done. Even programmatically in the past, there were limitations on what information you were getting, whereas now you really can be responding to that live. There's, what I'm seeing now is that the channels, the platforms themselves are actually building in AI into their tools, and you're getting more AI insights, as a beta into the business end of platforms. Otherwise, the team here is taking a lot of that data and running it through more bespoke kind of dashboards that we're building with like Looker Studio and these sorts of things, where we can actually take the data and use AI to either analyze and give us those insights, or to even just speed up the pace at which we can generate the reports. Instead of having to sort of build our own pivot tables and that sort of thing, you can give it the data and you can go, okay, please give me a histogram of what this has looked like over time, or can you pull out if it maybe a little less with paid, but even on a wider scale, what's the sentiment analysis here, and can you dive into that? So I think at the moment there's not like one size fits all tool that we're kind of using. It really is kind of drawing on a lot of insights and kind of building these custom dashboards to be able to deliver those insights to clients.
Right. Wonderful. I wanted to ask you, about where the biggest future, opportunities are going to lie in AI automation and performance-driven marketing. So do you have anything to add to what you just said?
So I think that AI is going to create a whole range of new roles for the industry that didn't exist before. Technology has always made certain roles redundant. That's not a new thing. It's been happening for decades, if not centuries. You're going to need people that understand how to use AI and apply it. And that's going to happen whether you're working in, data analysis and reporting, or if you're working in production. I work with a videographer who's leveraging AI to help with editing, but it's still him doing it, So I think that will be interesting to see. There's a whole generation that are growing up with their phones glued to their hands, and they're also, completely aware of what's happening in the world around them. I think that there will definitely be, with more that you can do, more possibilities are created. And I think that that's just going to happen faster and faster, which means there's going to be more optimization quicker, but you're going to need to figure out what to do with that optimization. And I think that that'll be an interesting thing to see for the industry. Whilst it's scary, and I'm seeing some things now where you can create your own AI avatar, and who knows if it's actually Mikhail doing this right now, or if it's AI talking to you. And that will continue. So maybe AI detecting people will be a thing because AI can't detect AI or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that's on top of the advancements we're talking about in work processes and in the data that we've got access to now and the creative possibilities, jobs will come out of that. And I think that's exciting.
That's exciting.
There's another point I think on that. When I came back from the TikTok Executive Summit towards the end of last year, and that's where they were presenting that AI was at the forefront of everything they were presenting, and they were presenting what they're calling like AI avatars. There were like 13 templates, and these are all kind of weird words to be talking about, fake influencers about. But it got me thinking, like, people were freaking out when Pixar created like animation, and they were like, oh, this is going to put jobs out of business, and, it's going to destroy the industry. And maybe for a time it was really trendy and people were kind of investing a lot of money in that. But actually after a while, it just became another type of content. And you've still got video content, cartoons exist, animation. My hypothesis in the long run is that AI will have this big peak, but then actually it'll come away and it'll just be part of the marketing mix. It'll be part of the creative mix. And consumers will kind of know when it's AI, maybe they won't, but I kind of see it fitting in and finding its place amongst everything else. I don't think it will completely replace things. And that's where this idea of simple human truths comes back, because I think that influencers now people want because they care about their backstory and they care about who they are. And I don't think you can fake that. I might be wrong, but I think it will just be one more tool at people's disposal.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of, like fun things that may happen, maybe not AI avatars, but AI can tell you if this influencer is, fake smiling or, he
Yeah.
maybe,
Maybe that'll
maybe.
be built into the tool, right? Maybe people, it start getting a bit Black Mirror, but maybe the
Oh,
ratings of
yeah.
the performance will start being automated and that sort of thing.
Right. Mikhail, your day-to-day job, your role at Pulse, how does it look like? Uh, uh, what tools you use, let's say AI tools, or anything like if you want to give us into the sneak peek into the life of a, managing director at Pulse, what does it look like?
I mean, I'd like to say it's big and glamorous, and but I'm often the ones doing the sort of bits that everybody else doesn't have time to do is what I find. But really, I mean, it's a matter of a couple of things: making sure that our clients are looked after at the front and foremost.
Yeah.
There's always things that are changing and evolving in a campaign, in a project. So making sure the client, the team understand what the client needs and that they're happy. I've been client side before for many years, so I kind of sometimes have a bit too much empathy there.
Yeah.
Then it's also growing, right, and finding new opportunities and new ways to work with new brands or introduce new ideas to those existing clients.
Right.
And ultimately making sure that the team is okay, but also that I'm tapping into them. I'm rapidly becoming the oldest person at the table, and
Same here. Yeah.
they can teach me. I mean, they're all going to cringe that my trend reference was Rat versus Demure. They're going to be like, Mikhail, what the hell are you talking about? Why were you talking about, I don't know, the anglerfish that died or something like that? But I think that it's spinning plates and making sure that the status quo is okay, but we're also looking forward, and that's why innovations like having our own media value tool is a really exciting thing, because actually that's something that we're not finding people are doing well in certain places, and we can actually start to have meaningful conversations for brands, A, to look good, and B, to make sure that they're investing in the right place. So that's exciting, and that's what keeps me going.
Wonderful. If you had to make one prediction, make a bold prediction about where influencer marketing will be in 5 years, what would it be?
My hope is that there's going to be a new platform. I think that
I like that.
It's time for a new player in the game, I think, and let's see what happens with TikTok in the States. They've certainly had a good run of being number one since sort of, the pandemic. But I think it's time for something new. I have a feeling that if there's someone that can nail live, that's going to be the most crucial thing. Live shopping is huge in Asia.
In China particularly.
I mean, it's where the social media networks are making their money. It's not off paid media anymore. It's live. And shopping aside, Be Real tried it with their sort of in the moment kind of content capture. I think, Instagram Live, TikTok Live, they've just not taken off in the West as much as what I think they're hoping for. So I think if there's somebody that can really gain traction and do what TikTok did with sound on and video, because people previously were just taking beautiful curated photos, they really made video front and foremost. Let's see if there's someone that can come in and nail the live game.
Wonderful. Last couple of rituals we make our guests go through. You have to give us a book recommendation or a film recommendation.
Book recommendation. I've got two. But I need to get the author of one of them. So give me 2 seconds. Okay. So first is this modern philosopher called Alain de Botton, who's excellent. He wrote Religion for Atheists. He's written quite a few really interesting books, but there's a book in here called Status Anxiety, which I really recommend. He's done a lot of work to understand why humans are the way they are, and the analysis of there was a point in time in which status didn't matter as much. If you were a king, you weren't worrying about what the plebs were doing. If you were a pleb, you were never thinking that you were going to be royal, right? People just knew. But over time, sort of ambition came in, and then you had like department stores that made fashion more accessible to the everyday person. So that's just a really interesting take on society.
Yeah, he has many interesting takes, because I remember one line by Alan de Botton. He said you'll marry a wrong person, something like that. Why you end up marrying the wrong person, something.
Yeah. He really seems to get society in kind of a terrifying way. The other book that I recommend, which I made sure I finished because of what the subject matter was, it's a book from Johann Hari called Stolen Focus. And it's all about why these things are stopping us from paying attention. And he's spoken to like a lot of people from a lot of really interesting different fields about, why it's not necessarily our fault, why maybe it needs to be a movement, and the tech gods need to kind of hold themselves a little more accountable. But it also has some really practical kind of learnings along the way about how you can introduce healthier habits with technology, so that your focus isn't stolen. So strongly recommend those two.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the book recommendations. Last ritual, you have to nominate someone like you, someone awesome for our podcast.
Now you've hit me. Now you've put me on the spot. Someone awesome like me that I wish that I had done my due diligence and known that this was coming up.
I wanted to put you in a spot because you may be knowing a lot of people, so you never know who will get.
Do you know what? There's a content creator and media personality called Riyadh Khalaf. I hope that I've said his last name correctly. Otherwise,
Riyadh. Okay.
Yeah, Riyadh. He's been doing the game for a long time. He's been on BBC. He was on MasterChef. But recently, last year, he went viral for finding a duck egg and rearing a duck. And it was just this really beautiful moment of like internet fame. He really kind of just went absolutely viral. It was really beautiful and innocent. And, I think, he was doing some really interesting things at the time as well. And it kind of helps to amplify that. But he's someone that really, cares about, the creator space and is really wanting to make a difference there as well. So shout out to you, Riyadh. And yeah, I think he would actually, from a content creator point of view, and also someone that's in the media industry for a while, would actually have a really interesting perspective to bring to the table.
We would definitely try to bring him on the podcast. Thank you, Mikhail, so much for coming to the show and sharing some simple human truths with us.
My pleasure. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And if you enjoyed the show, please let us know in the comment box, and follow Mikhail on LinkedIn because he's very big on LinkedIn. And do give us a follow. We are somewhere around 135K subscribers on YouTube now. Help us get to 150. And Mikhail, see you again, maybe on the next season. How about
Absolutely. That? It would be my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
Impulse, the influencer marketing podcast, is brought to you by Phyllo. Phyllo is the easiest way to get access to authenticated creator data from hundreds of different platforms. To know more about Phyllo, visit getphyllo.com. That's get, PHYLLO.com. Also, make sure to search for Influencer Marketing Podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube Podcasts. And don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Phyllo, thank you so much for listening.